Wow, you look at the last 15 days, Isaiah Joe announced he's going to return to Arkansas on August 1st, withdraw from the NBA draft. He did that 2 days prior to the August 3rd deadline for underclassmen to do so. And then 15 days later, it's basically a U-turn. And now he's back in the draft, as today was the deadline, the NBA's imposed deadline for underclassmen to declare. So now he has foregone the last 2 years of his Arkansas Razorbacks eligibility. And really, when you look at the past 2 weeks, a lot has happened. It's not a case where he had buyer's remorse or wasn't really fully committed on returning to the Razorbacks. Just the past week alone, you had two major conferences, the Pac-12 and the Big Ten, essentially canceled sports through the fall semester, putting everything off till the soonest of January. And we don't know yet how the other power conferences, including the SEC, are going to respond. But right now, the SEC is trying to move forward with fall football, with just a slightly pushed out schedule. But we'll see where that goes. In terms of Isaiah Joe's decision, though, the uncertainty surrounding college sports, coupled with, I think, the NBA being able to have this bubble, right? The NBA's had success for weeks playing inside this bubble, and that's his dreams to play in the NBA. So you're seeing the league in your future being able to deal with pandemic right now with too much uncertainty in college basketball. And then when you go back, I mean, he was in the NBA draft pool from late April till that August 1st day when he declared he was coming back to Arkansas and withdrew from the draft. Through that time, he had multiple interviews with most of the NBA teams. Some of them circled back for second interviews. And when you look at his underclassmen advisory committees, his second report there, when you start talking about being invited to the NBA Combine, 60 or so players get invited to that, and there's 60 picks in the two first and second round of the draft combined. There's a lot of indicators before he decided to come back to Arkansas that he's probably going to get, an early to mid-second round draft slot. Maybe there's an outside chance he gets somewhere in that late first round. So with all of that on the table, he still wanted to come back to Arkansas. But I think, again, the uncertainty of things in just the last 2 weeks, a lot happened in that time frame. And I think all those things really conspired to send Isaiah Joe back into the NBA draft. And look, there were a lot of players, underclassmen, that went back to school around the same time Isaiah Joe did when that deadline was looming on that August 3rd deadline to withdraw. And as far as I know, he's the only guy to get back in to redeclare. So that's interesting. And certainly there won't be as much competition as there was for selection. October 16th when the NBA's moved out that 2020 NBA draft. So he's not going to have as much competition in terms of players available from the underclassmen pool anyway, as there were just a few weeks ago. So I think when you look at several, you look at the several angles on this, and I think this is probably the right decision for Isaiah Joe. As much as it hurts Arkansas right now, the Razorbacks obviously now down a scholarship, but it's not just the fact that they've got one to fill this late, which may be hard to do. We know Musselman will work the portal when and where he can. It's the fact that you don't replace an Isaiah Joe, 17 points a game, led the SEC again last year in three-point shooting, even though he missed 6 games due to injury. And he's just a guy that not only his production, but he changes the way defenses have to play because his range goes out to NBA range. So, this is a big loss for Arkansas, but Musselman recruited well, that top 5 national recruiting class of 2020. The 3 grad transfers that came in ranked top 10 in the country. He's got pieces to build around, of course, Desi Seals, Connor Vanover, JD Notte, guys that have been in his program for a year. So there's pieces already in place, guys he's brought in, but it's certainly not going to be easy to replace the expected production and leadership of an Isaiah Joe.
Kevin, there's now more minutes out there for guys and get opportunities for guys to step up and have bigger roles than maybe they were not necessarily planning on having, but it opens things up for them now.
Yeah, great point, and I agree. I mean, Moses Moody's a guy that I've pegged as a day one starter as it is. Arkansas is going to count on him. They were going to anyway for production. Everything I've seen and heard so far about his performance in camp suggests he's a guy that can step into a big role. Moses Moody, you lose a Mason Jones, you lose an Isaiah Joe. What are they, 6'5"-ish guys out on the wing that can score the ball in a variety of ways? And Moses Moody's that guy. He's, coming in from the high school ranks, an elite three-point shooter, but he's shown us over the last few weeks, based on just the little bit of video clips we get from Razorback basketball program, that he's getting to the basket. Guys like K.K. Robinson, another freshman, 6-foot point guard that's had his moments in camp and you hear good things about. JD Notte, still out with the left wrist injury, but should be back within a week or two, and a guy that all of this last season while he was sitting out, the word was this guy was hard to defend and really got his offense at all three levels when he wanted to, and going up against other Razorbacks in practice. We just haven't seen it, in an official capacity, but expect him to be a guy that's going to contribute. And then we know Desi Sills, a double-figure score for Arkansas last year. He's the veteran in the backcourt. Jalen Tate, the 6'6" grad transfer from Northern Kentucky. So there are backcourt pieces on this team that I think can pick up the slack. It won't be easy because Isaiah Joe's scoring was a big deal. But like I said, it's the way that the gravity of and being a floor spacer for others to make it harder to defend other guys. But I do think a Moses Moody can also be that kind of a guy because of his elite shooting from beyond the three-point line. And as a team, this will be a much better three-point shooting team. Front court guys like Connor Vanover and Jalen Williams can knock down that three ball. Vance Jackson Jr., the grad transfer, 6'9". He's even played some point forward during camp. And Justin Smith, who's a high flyer and a guy that's a combo forward, is going to play some at the three. So I think Arkansas, Musselman's recruited well. You don't just replace guys like Mason Jones and now Isaiah Joe. That's not going to be easy. But he's recruited well, and he's got a nice mix of perimeter and front court guys that can do a variety of things, Jason. And I think that's going to be a key. Even without Isaiah Joe, I think this team can still compete in the SEC and still play for an NCAA tournament.